Hello there, this is Shân Millie, bringing you our latest GK vlog. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to be talking to Anna Bordon, who's recently taken a very exciting project around ESG data through the Lloyds Lab. So let's get on and have a really interesting conversation with Anna. Anna, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And would you just please share with our audience who you are, what you do, and yeah, just give us the first clue about that ESG data project that you worked on in the context of Lloyds Lab as well.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, so I'm Anna Bordon. I've been at Swiss Re 1 year and 3 months. I am a senior tech partnership lead working in the group delivery services. And for the past 10 weeks, I led the team in the Lloyds Lab working on an ESG prototype, addressing the gap of ESG data for the private market.
Absolutely, and I'm genuinely, as you know, Anna, because we've spoken a little bit prior to this, that whole area is deeply interesting, not just to me, but to lots and lots of people who'll be listening in today. So let's look in a little bit more detail at that project. So if you take us through, what was the goal and who is it designed to help?
Yes, absolutely. So what happened is that for the good last part of 2021, we had a lot of interaction with our clients in the London market who are looking into ESG and sustainability, both from an operation and investment perspective, but more and more from an underwriting perspective. And not only from a reporting angle, but also what's the link to risk profitability. And after all this interaction with clients, we understood that that's a common problem. And we wanted to test some ideas for a solution. And the best way to do so was to do that in a very short period of time and in a very iterative manner. And that's why the Lloyds Lab was a great experience for us, because it's a 10 weeks program and we worked with 9 managing agents throughout it. And it was the best way to test how to build a prototype, for the reason that we would have constant feedback from the managing agents, and we were able to include that feedback on a regular basis and test it back again, which in fact is the best way to innovate, because you are constantly talking to the end customer. And in fact, insurers are the customer for this prototype, because insurers want to know ESG profiles of single companies they insure, or they want to know ESG profiles of their portfolios.
Yeah, and so for those people who are not quite as obsessed with ESG data, I mean, you're an expert in being obsessed with it, Anna. I'm an enthusiastic amateur, I would say, but certainly obsessed with it. Could you just sort of explain for those people who don't necessarily know this, why that private market, private firms issue is so important, and also a little bit around why it's quite tricky to solve in that context of producing usable analytics and data for others?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we know, listed companies do publish ESG data on an annual basis, typically through sustainability reports or integrated annual reports. So when you talk to ESG data vendors, there is very, very good ESG data on listed companies, typically 15,000 to 20,000 companies, right? However, as insurers, large parts of our portfolios, and sometimes 50 to 80%, include private markets, which means that we have very little visibility of what the private markets or the private companies in our portfolios are actually doing from an ESG sustainability perspective. The reason for that is because these companies do not have to report. And also sometimes they don't even have people who can help them internally to collect the data and actually to provide those data to investors, for example. We've seen some changes from a regulatory perspective, especially in Europe, where we might see smaller companies starting reporting, but that has not been confirmed yet. So I think this is what we also need to notice, is that this is an ever-changing space. And I think it's a very interesting space, because what we know today about ESG and sustainability will change quite rapidly in the next 2 years, especially from a data perspective.
And you think the drivers for that are going to be regulatory and societal, presumably, right, as well?
Yeah, I think we have, in general, like regulations and stakeholders and shareholders pressure. I think for insurers, a big push would be to understand the link between ESG criteria and risk profitability. I think that is a key point to understand, to do more studies on.
Yeah.
That will really push forward the entire ESG sustainability agenda. On the other side, there is definitely a risk management angle. So it's extremely important to have ESG risk due diligence gates, and to understand how the companies that we are insuring meet those due diligence gates. And for that reason, ESG data is crucial, and even more so for private markets, because we insure a lot of them. Now, when it comes to ESG data for the private market, it's not that we don't have data, is that the data is scattered all over when it's available, and it is also in different format. So there's an added challenge, especially when you have unstructured qualitative data and you have to bring it back. And that's where we actually focused for the 10 weeks, in the sense that we knew there is data available out there, but how do we bring it back in a usable manner that can actually give insurers actionable insights when it comes to ESG?
Yeah, fascinating. So are you able to give us some insight into what you thought those actionable indicators were? And presumably those were were you testing with your managing agent, your real world customers, as you were saying? Were you testing those actionable indicators, as well as whether or not this actually works? So as you said, that link, okay, there's one set of questions around, is this valid data? Is the way you're collecting it the right way? Is it being squirted out in a useful and right way? Are we generating the data points that really matter? But then there's also the other question of how big, how much, which sectors, I guess, if that was as far as this project took you as well, Anna.
Yeah, so for the ESG prototype, because we had only 10 weeks, which went very fast.
Yes, sure.
I have to say. We used the UNEP FI PSI framework. And if you look at that, there's the 3 pillars: environmental, social, and governance. And then underneath you have themes, and underneath that you got risk criteria. So as far as indicators, we've used this publicly available framework, because I think every insurer should take time and think about what framework to adopt, and even go as far as developing their own framework. In terms of what you are alluding to, which is sector industry weighting, and what indicators are more material to certain industries or sectors, we didn't go as far as that, because for us, for the 10 weeks, the focus was very much like, we know there's data comes in different shape and formats. How can we bring this back to give something usable? Then the next step would then be for development, really understanding what indicators are material per sector and industry.
Yeah. So that experience, then, if we can move on to talk about, I have to stop myself from asking you more questions, Anna, because as you know, our initial conversation went on for a bit longer than we'd scheduled. But that whole experience of innovating through the Lloyds Lab, what was that like? What the high points, the perhaps not so high points, but overall, I mean, is it something that you would recommend as a way of developing and testing a prototype that actually puts you in contact directly with real world customers in London market?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, the idea of having 10 weeks that were focused was an excellent point, as in very often these projects take way longer. So having that pressure to deliver was really, really good. And I think that was also one of the reasons why I wanted to enter the Lloyds Lab. Because, is to be able to demonstrate that we are a data and tech-led company and we can deliver very fast and we can really build from scratch. And my take on innovation is that there is a lot of innovation theater going on, not only in insurance. I mean, it's a general plague we have. So being able to demonstrate that you do innovation by actually doing, and that's how you learn. Because next time I have to do something similar, which I hope is going to be another project for me, I'll know where I need to be careful. And I think I would recommend that to everyone. I mean, you do innovation by actually doing it, and you learn by doing it as well. It's less about decks or books or all of that has a place, but we need to get better at building things and testing them very quickly to see whether they're good or not.
So can I ask then, what did your 9 managing agents, what was their verdict then, Anna, on the prototype?
I absolutely enjoyed working with 9 managing agents, which is actually a very high number. I mean, I worked at Lloyd's before for 4 years and in emerging risks. So we used to do something similar, but it was more about writing emerging risks reports and engaging with the market. So that experience has helped me in this project. I mean, the level of knowledge that there is across the market is absolutely amazing. And the time that the mentors dedicated to us is another great selling point for the Lloyds Lab. Like, you will not be able to get, half an hour every week to have very detailed conversation in front of a prototype without being in the Lloyds Lab, because it really puts everyone in a situation where we all work together for 10 weeks and you almost know that after 10 weeks that's over.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's very nice. So the verdict we had was that we totally understood the jobs to be done for the managing agents. We understood the data challenges, and we proposed a very interesting methodology to bring everything together. Then what we've also heard is that this is a prototype and it does require further development because there are limitations around data. And also there are limitations around the jobs to be done, in the sense that at the moment, because ESG and sustainability is changing so fast, managing agents are still trying to understand what to do with any tools you put in their hands. Sure. And it could be our ESG prototype, it could be any other vendors, tools. So I think it's the right time to engage, because otherwise you miss the boat. But we also have to be patient and be able to quickly adapt as soon as things start changing, especially in 2023. Yeah.
So, Anna, what's next for you then? I mean, are you going to be developing the prototype further, or are there other things that you want to do now, having had the taste for a 10-week sprint that actually results in some of the benefits that you've just described for us?
Yeah, so I think the first thing would be to really show that innovation is worth doing, and it's not just something that you play with and then you forget about and you move on to something else. I think it is extremely important to follow through the prototype, not to develop this further to an MVP for the sake of it, but to really understand the financials and the potential. And that's what we're doing currently internally, and to also align with other sustainability analytics solutions that we've already developed in Swiss Re, given that we are a company that has been looking at ESG and sustainability for a long time. So no more on that, but definitely I am very interested to see that this project to get to MVP, where there are commercials and potentials in place. In terms of what's next in terms of other projects. I think, what we did in the Lloyds Lab for 10 weeks can be replicated for any topics out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be sustainability. It could be cyber, it could be property, it could be auto, could be crypto. It doesn't really matter. I think is just really putting together the right team, which we had as we three. And I was very privileged to work with very talented people and to deliver on real customers' problems and really talk to the customers on a regular basis, because I think sometimes that does not happen, not because we don't want to, but because it is hard to talk to customers on a regular basis, because they need to have time for you, and you also need to be fairly able to come up with what to put in front of them, to avoid them losing interest in what you're doing.
Sure. Well, Anna, congratulations on graduating through the Lloyds Lab and on everything you've achieved. I'm waiting with bated breath to see what you do next, Anna. Right. Thanks so much for spending that time with us today, and look forward to the reaction that we get when this vlog is published. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you for having us. Cheers.